So we're going to dive right in. Like I said, people might be trickling in as we get going. I'll let them in as we go. So why are we even doing this? What I'm so excited about for all of you know me through Evox, which is really fun. You're all familiar faces to me. And many of you guys might not know that actually when I launched the Accrescent, I was doing bioenergetic testing and Evox from the get-go. And I myself was doing both of those. And both were so exciting. However, I found that I was getting more and more lit up by the Evox side of things, which I think is no surprise to all of you. That's kind of where my heart and soul lives, is in that emotional work. And so I decided to, you know what, I want to give all my capacity and time to Evox. And so I let go of the bioenergetic testing. I still had the technology, which is funny because it's very expensive, but I wasn't doing anything with it. And so just this year, decided to bring someone on to start doing the bioenergetic testing so that I can still do what I love most, which is the Evox, but now being able to provide this really, really powerful kind of resource and tool to everyone. So a little bit of the history, because it's actually not something new to the Accrescent. It's something that was here and then got let go and then is now being brought back. So what are we going to do? I mentioned this already pretty quickly. I do want to spend some time, which is why I've got these slides up. I want to spend some time on the history, the science behind bioenergetic testing. We're going to go over a full sample report of our comprehensive lifestyle scan. This I can't wait, because it's one of those things where once people see the scan and how much information it provides, it kind of is like a no-brainer. Like, oh my gosh, of course, I want all that information. And then we're going to open it up to a Q&A. I want to get through the slides pretty quickly so we have as much time as possible for the Q&A. With that said, really quickly, if questions come up as we're going, what I will suggest is either one, write them down so you don't forget, or type it in the chat. The chat button is down at the bottom right corner. You can see it says chat with everyone. You can type them in the chat. I will save those up till the end to go over them. But if you need to put them in the chat right now as we're going through so you don't forget, feel free. Otherwise, we will save all the questions for the end to go through. Okay, so history of bioenergetic testing. I bet you guys didn't know that this goes all the way back to 2000 BC, because bioenergetic testing is based in traditional Chinese medicine, which dates all the way back to 2000 years before Christ. So a long, 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 long time. And Chinese medicine is based, there's a lot of measuring the human body's energy systems. There's a lot of energy medicine in Chinese medicine where so much of this is founded upon. I'm not going to go through every single little time marker here. And like we said at the beginning, you guys are going to get the recording to this. So if you want to look at this a little deeper, you can go back to the recording and reflect on it. But I do want to point out a couple of the key things. One of the ones that I just love so much is 1888. This is when they discovered emotions can change skin resistance. We're going to talk about skin resistance in a little bit, what that is, but that is so foundational to bioenergetic testing. But more than 100 years ago, this was discovered, that even 1849, they discovered the skin has electrical conductivity. So the history of this dates back very, very far. Bioenergetic testing is not new, but doing it in this more modernized way is what is a little bit newer. I'll fast forward us to 1901. I do want to point this out because sometimes when we talk about energy medicine, they get a little weird. They're like, okay, that's kind of woo-woo. But something I always love to point out is in hospitals, you'll see here 1901 is when practical electrocardiogram was created. And what is an electrocardiogram? It's literally them measuring the energy of the heart. And this is something that every single hospital room has an electrocardiogram to measure the electricity of the heart. So in some ways, bioenergetic testing, measuring the body's energy, is something that is being used in conventional medicine that maybe we don't think of that often. But the way in which we're using it here is a little bit different. 1930 is when acupuncturists began testing the specific meridian points testing those electrical properties of the meridian points in the skin. And then I'm going to fast forward us all the way to 2004. Again, if you guys want to reflect on this more, you can sit with it. 2004, this is when Dr. Cook, who is the pioneer and the founder of Zyto, the technology that I use here, this is when he founds Zyto and really launches this more modernized form of bioenergetic testing. So even that was over, not over, almost exactly 20 years ago. And so I like to point that out because sometimes when I'm introducing people to bioenergetic testing, it feels like, oh, this must be new? Is this kind of like, what is this really? Has anyone looked into this? And when I start to talk them through, first of all, the technology I'm using has been around for 20 years. It's been updated over the years, but it kind of originated 20 years ago, but it goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years. So what is Zyto bioenergetic testing? What are we doing here? And all of my EVOX people, you'll be familiar with the hand cradle. And what's interesting, this is, I think, a fun distinction. In EVOX, the hand cradle device is an output device, meaning, as you guys all know, while you're going through an EVOX session, we are outputting into the body frequencies that help support the balancing and the release of emotions. With the bioenergetic testing side of things, it's a measurement device. It's collecting information from us. And in some ways, it's outputting information into the body. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more. So what many of you might not know is that blue hand cradle that we use for all of our EVOX and bioenergetic testing is a Class 2 FDA-approved medical device to measure something called galvanic skin response. What is galvanic skin response? This is the change in electrical conductivity of the skin. And what researchers and scientists have discovered over the years is that anytime anything comes into our field of energy, and we know that our field of energy extends at least 3 feet from the body, anytime anything comes into our field of energy, the electrical conductivity of our skin changes instantaneously. And that can tell us whether our body had a positive or a negative response to all of these external stimuli. And so what that hand cradle is doing is it is measuring the instantaneous response your body has to all of these different stimuli that we are introducing into the system. I sometimes like to give the analogy of muscle testing. I'm sure some of you are familiar with muscle testing, and basically what they're doing is a form of energy testing where your chiropractor or whoever your practitioner is introducing something into your field. Sometimes it's a supplement, an herb, a practice, and then, whether it's through like the arm push or the finger pull, they're testing your body's response to that stimuli. But what's tricky about manual muscle testing is they have to test every single item one at a time. And if they were going to test hundreds and hundreds of items, you'd be there all day doing muscle testing. Zyto has computerized that process where what they're doing is they are outputting the energetic signature of thousands of items, pathogens, pollutants, foods. They're measuring organ systems so that we can measure your body's response to thousands of items in a 30, 45-minute session. So what are the of a bioscan? And like I said before, if questions are coming up, feel free to type them in the chat, write them down. That way we won't forget them. But the 3 components to a bioscan or a biosurvey, I put both of those words up there because they're interchangeable. You might hear me use both of them. They mean the same thing. Bioscan's just shorter sometimes. Every scan I offer here at the Accrescent, there's 2 scans we're offering right now. They're really doing the same 3 things. Only one scan gives a massive amount of information compared to the other one. Number 1, we're identifying the priority imbalances. What this means is we're asking your body, we're measuring your body's energetic baseline, and then we're asking about basically the well-being and the balance or imbalance of organs, hormones, bones, neurotransmitters, so many different things to see, based on your energetic baseline, what things are coming up as imbalanced. And I'm going to lean more, once we start going through the report, I'm going to explain more why I use this term priority imbalances, but that will make sense as we start to go into the report. Number 2 is we're identifying priority stressors. Again, we are outputting into the body the electronic signature for all of these different things: parasites, bacteria, viruses, mycotoxins, molds, chemical pollutants, foods, thousands of different things. And based again on that energetic baseline, we're measuring your body's response to these different stressors and stimuli. And it can tell us what might be, based on those imbalances we're seeing, what might be some of the things causing those imbalances. And then the last one, which is the one that I think is super, super exciting, is we're also scanning your body's response to a variety of different, what we call balancers. So it's what might be imbalanced in the body, what might be causing or contributing to those imbalances, and then what's going to help restore balance. And this is where we can measure your body's response to different supplements, foods, exercises, diet types, services, a number of different things that I think is really empowering and exciting to see that information, because oh, of all the hundreds and hundreds of things I could do, these were some of the things my body had the best response to. Okay, short, sweet, to the point. Like I said, if questions are coming up, type them in, write them down. I'm now going to get into going over the lifestyle report, because this is where we're going to spend a little bit more time. This is like a 28-page report. But I think it's going to be really fun to go through all of this with you guys, because you're going to get just such a sense for it. So let me make sure I get the right screen up here. Don't mind my poor technology skills. Okay, so we all can see this report. Yes. Again, you guys are gonna have access to the recording, so I'm gonna go through it. Feel free to watch the recording back. This report is also available on the website. So I know it's kind of hard to see because it's a little far away. You can't quite see it fully zoomed in, but it is available on the website. So even after, once we get off the call tomorrow, some other time, if you want to look at this more in depth and kind of closer up, you can do that on the website too. So this is the Lifestyle Comprehensive Report. This is our most comprehensive scan we do. You can see here, this one in particular is 28 pages of information. And I'm just going to start to go through this report as if you guys were a client sitting in front of me and I was explaining your report to you. So what this report shows us right off the bat, maybe I can even zoom in for you guys. There we go. Maybe that's better. What this report shows us right off the bat is how many biomarkers are out of range. And what biomarkers mean, biomarkers represent the hormones, the organs, bones, neurotransmitters, all the different things inside you. And by out of range, it means imbalanced. So how many of your biomarkers are imbalanced? Right now, this is showing that there's 308 biomarkers imbalanced. Sometimes that jars people a little bit. What I will say is the 300s is pretty typical. Most people I scan are within the 300s. I think the healthiest person I ever scanned was 100, maybe 150-ish. And I think this is important to point out because we're not necessarily waiting for the day where you have a scan and every single thing in your body is in perfect balance, right? That might be a little far-fetched. We're an ever-changing, ever-growing being. There's always going to be little tweaks here and there. But I always like to point out that that 300 range is pretty typical, but I like to see it closer to the 100 range. Actually, Krista, I'm thinking of you. I think you were under 100. We did Krista's scan 2 weeks ago.
I was under 100.
And she had the lowest biomarkers out of range of anyone I've ever seen. So we were having a little happy dance in the office. It was awesome. So showing us how many biomarkers are out of range, and then it's going to go right into the top balancers. And what this means is of the supplements, of the foods, of the services, of everything we scanned that could help restore balance, these were the ones that were the top ones for you. And we always let people choose when they're booking the appointment what supplement lines they want us to scan. We don't have access to every single supplement line in the world, but Metagenics is the line that we often scan because it's a really high quality brand. So these first three products here are all products from Metagenics, and we scanned every single product from the Metagenics line. and measured this person's response to all of the products, these are the ones their body had the best response to. And what I love about this particular part of the scan is you can see here, it says, this is the actual product. MG is Metagenics, mag citrate is the product name. Right below that, it says biomarkers brought into range. Basically, this means biomarkers brought into balance 143. What that tells us is this specific product brought 143 of those imbalanced markers back into balance. And that often for me is very telling. Oftentimes it's something where I'll say, hey, is this a product you have? Is this a product you might consider taking? Let's look at what the body might be needing. The fact that there's very often one or two products that bring a huge number of biomarkers back into range, that's very, very telling, right? Because you can see here this next one, the Metagenics Caprex, it brought 67 back into range. Still significant, but the fact that this first one brought so many back into balance really draws my eye to that. So this first page is listing those top balancers for that person, for that scan. And you can see they're not all products. Sometimes for some people, the top balancers are all supplements. More often than not, it's a little bit of a mix. It could be some supplements. For example, this is just digestive enzymes, broadly speaking. They even have a couple of foods that came up as top balancers for them. And then even breathing exercises came up for them. It completely varies person to person. What I will say that I have seen and found is when every single balancer is a supplement, sometimes that tells me that whatever's going on sometimes it could be something chronic that's been lingering for a while. And it does tell me that their body's needing a little bit more support to restore balance. Whereas sometimes I'll have people come in, they might have 300 plus biomarkers that are out of range, but most of their balancers are foods or services. And what that tells me is, yeah, we've got some things that are imbalanced, but actually just a few of these simple food additives, foods, exercises, services are going to restore that balance for you. So sometimes when it's all products, all supplements, it tells me it could be something that's been chronic for a while and the body is needing more support than it might typically need to restore balance. And then it goes into product description. So whatever those top balancers are, it does explain what each of those products are, if they're supplements, kind of what they're supportive of. That first one is, great for bone health, healthy muscle function. The next one is for immune function, etc. Just explaining some of these top balancers. And I don't typically tell people, in fact, I never tell people, okay, run out and buy and do all of these immediately, right? For a number of reasons. One, many people have a good number of supplements already. And so I'll encourage them, hey, check your cupboards. Do you have a similar product? Do you have something that has similar ingredients? If so, you might not need to run out and buy this right away, but you might want to prioritize integrating that supplement into your routine. Likewise, this is something I'm going to say again and again and again as we go through this scan. We try not to get zoomed in on any one particular supplement, any one particular biomarker, any one particular item. What I'm really trying to look at is what is the big theme? As we go through all 28 pages of this report, what starts to surface as kind of a recurring theme for this person versus any one particular supplement, marker, etc. And I can explain that more as we go as well. So now we're going into the 4 core body systems. With the lifestyle comprehensive scan, we scan these 4 systems of the body: the detox, the gastro, the hormone, and then the immune system. And what you were seeing right here is, of these 4 systems, which system is the most imbalanced, or the way that I often like to call it, the body's priority. What we can see right off the bat, the immune system has the highest numerical value here, and that will always be designated by the red here. It's 24. Something I'm going to take a second to point out is you'll see this red line through most of the report, and then right up here it says range 5.9. The range is basically that person's energetic baseline that day. And it's that baseline. We start by measuring that baseline. And then everything else gets measured against that baseline. What that number isn't too particularly important because that's different for every person every single time they come in. That energetic baseline is going to be a little bit different. Where it does become relevant is any number over here, all these numbers we're going to see as we start to go. Some things might be slightly imbalanced, but the numbers that are at least 2.5 times the range, so 2.5 times this number over here, let's just round that up to 6 to make it easy. 2.5 times 6, those are numbers that we want to start to pay attention to as the real priority imbalances for the body. The reason I say priority imbalances is what I love about these scans is it's literally the body telling us, hey, if you're going to focus on anything right now, here's what I want you to focus on first. How is that important or relevant? For example, right now in this scan, the body's telling us it wants us to focus on the immune system first. And then the gastrointestinal system is slightly imbalanced, but it's actually not quite that number 13.04. That's actually not 2.5 times 6, right? So it's maybe slightly imbalanced, but not as much as that immune system. Why this is important though is this doesn't necessarily mean the gastrointestinal system has nothing going on. This doesn't necessarily mean that the detox system is in perfect balance. What it does mean is that the body's saying, if you're going to focus on anything, it wants you to focus on the immune system first. And this is why we often tell people to get in a nice rhythm of every 3 months, every 6 months minimum, come in and we do a rescan. Because what so often happens is, let's say you do the scan, this person does this scan, they then spend 3 months working on their immune system with their practitioner, integrating some of the changes. They might come back and their immune system's golden. Now the body's saying, great, now that you've worked on the immune system, I want you to work on the gastrointestinal system a little bit. So, and I think this is pretty common knowledge that most of us see, especially those of us who have spent time in the healing integrative world, that it's layered. It's hard to tackle everything at once, but also we don't always need to tackle everything at once. And sometimes I think that's what can be really overwhelming with this work, is this feeling of, well, I have this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And the doctor's like, great, let's throw everything at it all at once. And sometimes having a more refined approach and then spending a couple months on that thing, getting that back into a good place, moving on to the next thing, can actually be more impactful versus trying to hit it all at once. And so these scans are telling us, it's literally the body saying, if you're going to focus on anything, focus on this first. And that's what I love, because it makes it super, super clear. So what I tend to do for clients in this report in appointments is I don't go through every single report, because each of these, the detox system, the gastro, the hormone, the immune, you'll see here, they all have their own full report. What I tend to do for clients is in the appointment, I'll flip to the main one or two. So for example, the immune, maybe the gut system, and then I'll say, on your own time, you can look at some of those other systems if you want to, which people always do. So I'll explain, because each of these reports for each of these systems has a similar flow. I'll start with this gastrointestinal one. So these sub-reports, what it's telling us is within the gastrointestinal system, what organs, hormones, etc., might be imbalanced. And it's gonna list those out for us here: rectum, gallbladder, stomach. Then it's gonna tell us what were the main stressors. So it's what's stressed in this system, what are the main stressors in this system. And you can see for this person, some of the top stressors were fluoride, antidepressants, soft drinks, cortisol. We're going to start to explain this a little bit more as we go, but it's so fun to be able to see this. And what gets me so excited about this type of testing is to test for the amount of things we do in a 30, 45-minute scan. We would have to typically do, I don't even know how many vials of blood. I don't even know how many different, scans and reports with the doctor that are super expensive, can take a ton of time, just getting there, going back and forth from the doctor's office. And so to be able to get such a broad amount of information in such a short period of time is so much more efficient. If we go to the doctor and we're like, I'm having all these symptoms and I'm experiencing this and this and this, the doctor's going to be like, okay, great. Let's test for everything. At least if you have a good one, right? Sometimes the doctor is just like, well, let's run some standard bloods and see what's going on. If you're working with an integrative doctor, they might do some deeper digging, but still, it's sort of like, let's just kind of make these broad brushstrokes to try and get an idea of what's going on. But what I love about this scan is if we start with something like this, you as the individual can go to your doctor and say, hey, I'm having all these symptoms. There might be multiple things going on, but based on this scan I did, my body's telling me it wants us to focus first on heavy metals and mold. So let's not worry about all the hundreds and hundreds of other tests we can do right now. Can we kind of refine our process to mold and heavy metals? So it allows you to come to your doctor with much more refined information that can, I think, make the process so much more efficient and smooth versus just kind of having to take a shot in the dark to see what's going on. What I love too about this scan is at the end of each part of the scan, there's also a piece of what were the top balancers for this area specifically. So the beginning of the entire report tells us what were the top balancers overall of everything. These were the ones your body had the best response to. But I do think it's fun to be able to see, for example, specifically the top balancers for the gastrointestinal system were digestive enzymes, kefir, prayer and meditation, breathing exercises, which for this client is pointing to there might be some emotional contributors to their gut health. So I'll also show us quickly the immune system, because that was another report for them that was stressed. Again, it's looking at what organs within the immune system might be stressed: spleen, large intestine, adenoids, liver, and then what might be contributing to that stress in the immune system. Some of these top things here. And then again, at the bottom, there's always going to be the top balancers for that system in particular. What I'll point out here is, like I said before, we're starting to look, for trends. I'm not necessarily zooming in on any one particular item. We're trying to look for trends of what is sort of repeatedly coming up. What stressors are repeatedly coming up? What organs are repeatedly coming up as stressed? What balancers are repeatedly coming up as top balancers? And something I've even seen just kind of going through this ever so quickly is cortisol has come up in both the gastrointestinal and the immune system. And for both the gastrointestinal and the immune system, balancers included prayer and breathing. So I'm starting to see, if you guys can see, like I'm starting to see a trend of, okay, stress keeps coming up in some of these different ways. So let's keep that on the radar a little bit. Karina, I saw your question. I'm going to make sure we get to that at the Q&A. Thanks for putting that in. Now we're looking at these 6 lifestyle areas. And again, each of these has its own full report that you guys are going to love getting to go through. So diet and nutrition, hydration, inflammation, mental emotional stress, sleep, toxic stress. And so how do I briefly interpret this? What it's telling me is, hey, none of these items are too insanely stressed, but if you were going to work on something, the body wants us to work on toxic stress first. Because each of these reports are so great, I am going to go through each of these specifically. So diet and nutrition, what we're scanning for, we scan for over 200 diets. And basically we're measuring your body's response to all of these different diets. Again, that doesn't mean I send the client home saying, okay, great, go implement these diets immediately. It's very much, hey, what are the trends we're seeing when you go to your doctor with these results? And based on, the information they have, the work you're doing with them, what are their ultimate recommendations for you? I try to be really careful about we don't make recommendations. We will help interpret the report, but we want you working with your doctor who really knows the ins and outs of your health journey to be able to make those final recommendations. So we scan for over 200 diets to see which ones your body has the best response to. And then we scan for hundreds of different foods to see what were the top 10 foods your body had a great response to. And this is really fun because the foods are something where it's like, hey, yeah, how can we start integrating these a little bit more? There's something in these that your body is really needing or responding well to. And then there's the top food stressors. And these are so often just all the food additives. So what might be some of the top food additives that might be stressing your body a little bit right now? Going into hydration, what might be some of the top stressors to hydration? Again, as I go through these reports with clients, I often will remind them, hey, we're seeing red here because it is going to give us a hierarchy. But if we go back up to this main report here, hydration wasn't actually that stressed. It's not the main priority, which is why I will always continue to reiterate to clients, this is one of the things with this comprehensive scan, because it's so much information. I try to tell them, don't get zoomed in on any one particular item. We're looking at those general themes. It's fun to look through all these reports, the diet, the hydration, the inflammation. But for this person in particular on this day, these weren't that stressed. So even as they're looking through those, just kind of keeping that in the back of their mind of, although there are going to be things that are coming up, and of course there's tweaks they can make if it resonates with them and it's within their capacity, this isn't necessarily what the body is saying is the priority right now. General hydration balancers, top cell salts for them. Inflammation, what are some of the top stressors or contributors to inflammation? You can see this person, gluten is one for them. And then top inflammation balancers. Again, every single report is going to have its own little mini balancers section. Mental and emotional stress. What might be some of the things contributing to mental and emotional stress? Again, there's so many different things we scan for. What I think is interesting with this person is cortisol's coming up again, but insulin, which also could point to maybe there's some blood sugar issues that are creating some anxiety for them. The immune system. So if the immune system is off, it can affect our mental and emotional health. So it's great to be able to get this amazing bird's eye view of what some of the things might be. And sometimes people will go, oh my gosh, I had a feeling, or especially with a lot of the balancers, what I hear people say is, I had just the other week, a doctor come in who did the scan, and she was like, matcha was coming up as a big balancer for her. And she's like, oh my gosh, I have been craving matcha for weeks now. And it's like, yeah, the body is speaking to us. It's always speaking to us. It's just, most of us aren't really able to translate what the body is communicating. And I think that's really what this scan is. It's a translation of what the body is asking for. This is a connector of emotions and organs. And so this is really fun because very specific emotions will come up, impatience, hate, small intestine, the heart. I want to see if this one had any worry. Yeah. And so again, like you can see, we're starting to see a trend for this person. I promise I didn't choose the scan on purpose. You guys are all my Evox clients. You're going to think I chose this one on purpose because the stress is coming up as a big theme for them. Worry. And so again, like we're starting to see this theme show up of, okay, cortisol is being a stressor, worry's coming up as a top emotion, breath work is coming up as a top balancer. And this is where I would really encourage that person to go, hey, your body's telling us something. If there's deeper testing you need to do with your practitioner, do it. And then of course, working with them, how can we start to address this stress that your body seems to be communicating to us? We look at sleep. So what are some of the top stressors to sleep, which is really, really fun and interesting to get to read through. Interestingly, one that I sometimes see come up really often is cell phones. That I think many of us don't realize we're sleeping with our cell phones like on our bedside table or pretty close to us. And it's on here. Look, oh my gosh, I didn't even see it right down here at the bottom, cell phone. Comes up so often because of just how disruptive all those technologies and signals are. So toxic stress. This one is, I think, really particularly interesting for me, but we're scanning the body for its response to bacteria, fungi, molds, mycotoxins, viruses, parasites. And this top place right here, toxic stressor collections, what this is saying is of all the categories of stressors, these were the ones weighing on this person's system most: mycotoxins, viruses, and bacteria. And then, excuse me, there's going to be a list here of the top specific items that came up that might be causing or contributing to some stressors within the body. This is where I have to take a second to give a little disclaimer and say, this is not diagnostic, right? This is your body's energetic response to some of these different things. Sometimes it can scare people because certain viruses come up or bacteria come up that they're like, oh my gosh, am I going to die? No, of course not. It's not diagnostic. We still say, hey, go, something I refer people to a lot, especially if there's viruses, bacteria, pathogens coming up, is the Firefly F scan. At the center, we have that over here, but now there's more people doing it kind of across the states to be able to get a better sense of what is actually in my body. Sometimes some of these things can come up as stressors, even though you might not have an active infection, for a number of reasons. One, you could have a really low grade infection that maybe isn't coming up on blood work because it's so low grade, but it is coming up on the energetic testing. Likewise, a lot of these things have similar energetic signatures. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have every single one of these pathogens in your body. But if I see toxic stress in general coming up as an overarching area of imbalance, and then we're seeing what is within this toxic stress, for this person, it's pathogens. Toxic stress can also include chemical pollutants. So sometimes for people, I see a ton of chemical additives, things like bleach, cleaning products, pesticides, herbicides. Sometimes for them, it's a lot of that stuff. Sometimes in the case of this person, it's more pathogenic. And so just like with everything else in the report, when it's pathogenic and this is coming up, what I encourage them to do is say, hey, take this information, go to your doctor and say, hey, what are some tests we can do for mycotoxins, viruses, bacteria, if they want to look into that a little bit deeper, and then also be able to create an even more custom treatment plan for some of these things. Yes, and then top balancers for toxic stress as well. And then we're getting into some of the top balancers overall. So we scan for over 200 types of exercise, and it lists out of each of these exercise categories, what exercises did your body have the best response to. Interestingly, what I see very often is when people have a lot of stress, the types of exercise that come up for them are very gentle exercises, which I'm seeing so clearly in this person's report here. Pilates, yoga, swimming, hydration, breathing, foam rolling, a lot of very gentle, slow things. I think the only kind of high intensity thing here really is the running. So that's just a fun little trend I tend to see. And then we scan for over 400 different services. This is, I mean, just about everything you could think of. There's some services we scan for that I don't even know what they are because there's so many, but these could be things like red light therapy, IV hydration, biocharger, biomodulator, so many different things, acupuncture, chiropractic care, Reiki, hundreds and hundreds of different things. And of all of those 400 things we scanned, it gives us the list of the top 5 things your body had the best response to. So it's a great, fun little takeaway. And again, you'd be surprised how often people do this and they're like, oh my gosh, I've been craving a Reiki session. And it's like, yes, your body was talking to you and you were intuiting it a little bit, but maybe having difficulty kind of pulling the trigger. And so often these scans like really reiterate and affirm some of the things that you already felt you had these nudges or inklings around. And it's so great to be able to get a little bit more of that affirmation. So, okay, that is the end, my friends. Let me check the time. We might go a little bit over. I'll stay on as long as there's questions. So we don't have to stop right at 7. Let me stop the screen share. I'm gonna pull up the Q&A over here, the chat, but feel free, guys, this is up to you. If you want to type your questions in the chat, I will read through the ones that are here already. But then if you want to raise your hand, turn your camera on and just ask the question verbally, you can totally do that too. But I will start with Karina's 2 questions. what is the benefit of this scan compared to other bioenergetic scans? I'm thinking especially of the scan versus Molly's Bioimmune. Totally. They're the same technology. The technology is a little bit different. They're both bioenergetic testing. But what's different, I think, about it's really the what we're scanning for, and then the presentation of the information, I think, is the big one. If you've done Molly's Bioimmune, it's really more looking at some of just the core imbalances in the body. So the lymphatic system is stressed, the immune system is stressed, some of these different things. I think the difference with the lifestyle comprehensive is we really go pretty deep into some of the top stressors, some of the top causes of imbalances. And then likewise, all of the broad balancers. Molly can measure for certain balancers, but it's a little more refined because she brings each one, almost doing that manual, like bringing each balancer in again. But it's still a great scan. I mean, everyone at the center does that scan. In no way trying to compete with them. It's still a great scan. I think just also how the information is presented sometimes, the report of the lifestyle is, I think, pretty easy for the individual to ascertain. Okay, and then Karina's saying I have another engagement, but she'll watch the video back. Okay, amazing. Thanks, Karina. Any other questions coming up? Wow, you guys. Am I just that good of a presenter? I'm teasing. Well, I'll give it another minute or two. Oh, don't let me forget, I want to share the discount code or the savings code for you guys. I'll give it another minute or two just in case questions come up. But yeah, like I said, the report that I just went through is going to be online. So you guys can kind of, if you want, like take your time to go through it a little bit more. There's also a sample of the advanced lifestyle scan, which is kind of the entry level scan, if you will, that gives more condensed information. It's a little less overwhelming. Sometimes the comprehensive scan can be a little overwhelming with how much information it provides. But both of those are on the website already for you guys to look at a little bit more.
So Leanne, if I did this a couple weeks ago, when would I want to? I've incorporated the major thing that it would told me to do.
Yeah.
So how long would I give myself? About 3 months?
I'd say 3 months at a minimum. 3 months at a minimum, because we want to give time for it to take effect, for shifts to start happening. So I usually say 3 months at a minimum. If you really wanted to, 6 months, but it just more depends on like when you want to have that check back in of, okay, great, I've worked on this. Where am I at? And what are the new priorities for my body? Yeah. And you'll probably get a reminder email. I did set that up. So if you haven't booked that follow-up yet, you'll probably get a reminder email of, hey, it's been about 3 months. Might be time to do a rescan.
And then one of the things on mine, and it was actually on that test one that you just had too, said aura healing. Yes. Are you going through and like trying to find practitioners that do stuff like that? Because I mean, I don't know anybody that does that.
Yes, this is, I'll say two quick things to this. One, sometimes it can be fun because there might be something that comes up there as a balancer that you've never heard of before, that you then do some research around and you're like, ooh, this actually sounds kind of interesting and exciting. Maybe I will go find someone who does this. Likewise, though, again, kind of what's the theme, right? Aura healing is energy healing. And so I wouldn't say it necessarily means you absolutely must go find an aura healer, right? But I would say maybe a starting point is if there are some particular energy modalities that you do really love, like acupuncture, like Reiki, that could be a really great place to start. It's sort of kind of like what I was saying with the supplements. If you have things in your orbit already that are similar, totally fine to start there. But if you're also like, you know what the heck? I want to try this and see what's up. That can be fun too. But it's more of like, what are those general themes? And if there's things that are pretty similar, I think it's totally okay to start with what is within your capacity, within your, area, etc. Yeah, I've thought about going through and editing because I can refine how many services I scan for. and I just threw them all in there. So we scan for all, 400 plus things. Like I said, sometimes I don't even know what they are. And I've thought about, like, I could refine it down to a point, especially, Krista, over at Ascent. I scan for everything Ascent offers, and I could refine it to a point where it's like I only scan for what they offer, which is great. And they offer amazing things. But there's a part of me that's like, no, I want to, even if I don't know what everything is, I want to be able to give them the depth and breadth of that information to be able to look into. So, yeah. Amazing. Okay, last call for questions, friends. Thank you guys so much. So good to see
Julia,
all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your week.